Hello, YouTube. I hit a snag in some of the research that I was doing for another video, and I decided to just take a day to relax today and just tell you guys a story as a primary content provider here on YouTube, because I don't just talk about other people. Um, Sometimes I tell stories about my own life, and today I want to tell you all about a memory that I've had lately because of some of the things I've talked about on YouTube, and that is the time that I got rejected from an ethical review board for the first time. And the first time this happened, it was 2006 and 2007, because the process takes a while. So this was 10 years ago almost. And the reason why I was submitting a study to the ethical review board in order to be able to do it with the blessing of my school was because, as part of capstone classes for many majors, even as an undergrad, you have to do everything it takes to actually get a study to publication. Follow the entire process. There are whole capstone classes for the undergrads just based on each step of the way, and you have to take all of them. And part of the requirements is to actually do it. And they have journals for undergrads, for their research, so that you can, get a little start if you make it all the way. Now, you don't have to actually have your paper published in a journal for undergrad science in order to pass these classes, but you do have to take all the steps it would take in order to get published, because there still is a selection process. And if you get stuck on a fork in the road, like I'm about to tell you all about, then you don't suffer as far as your grade. You have to do extra reports as far as what happened and what you would change and things of that nature. And so you can still come out of a class with an A, having not successfully done that step. And in one of my classes, I had a requirement to submit a study to the ethical review board for reals. Okay. Such that if they were to approve of that study, I could then say that I was from the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee. Right? Basically, publishing studies is all about prestige, and if you're not from a school or doing it with the backing of a school, then that's one less line you get on your prestige page, the front page of your paper. So, it's very important to get through that. And the study that I proposed, I felt was a simple one. It had to do with behaviorism in psychology, and it had to do with some of the resources that I had on hand. At the time, I was working full-time and going to school full-time, and my job I was an electronics calibration technician for General Electric, and I was working in plants all throughout the Milwaukee area and in Waukesha, Wisconsin. And a couple of the plants had very good views of the parking lot. Okay, you could get up on the third or fourth story, look out a window, and see the entire parking lot. You could get out on balconies. They had bird watcher reservations right next to them. The animal preserves that they got tax breaks for, and right next to it was just a giant parking lot where all of the employees would park and then go in and make MR and X-ray equipment. And one of the things I noticed working there for a couple years was that many of the people there were reckless, had reckless hobbies, and had reckless habits. Even though some of them were the most intelligent engineers you'd ever meet, some of them had some crazy sides to them. And one thing I noticed a lot was that in a parking lot that size at those factories, where hundreds of people were parking, sometimes in inclement weather, the conditions of the parking lot would be pretty bad. It snowed a lot in Milwaukee. You get a lot of lake effect snow from Lake Michigan, where there wasn't even a snowstorm, but just from the humidity coming off the lake, it dumps onto Milwaukee. And so that parking lot had a lot of slips, trips, and falls, a lot of bad stuff, and sometimes they would spread out salt, but sometimes they just run out of salt to spread. And I noticed that some of the people would be so tired after their day of work that they would go out into the parking lot and their windshield would be covered in snow or ice, and sometimes snow that melted a little bit into the sheet of ice that's really hard to scrape off, even with the best equipment, the best ice scraper. And so you have to spend a lot of time scraping all of the snow, all of the ice, and all that stuff off of your vehicle. And sometimes in a large parking lot like that, if they haven't plowed, there's also snow on the ground where it makes it, difficult to, chip away at all that ice, because you don't want to get snow inside of your shoes and inside your socks and the folds of your pants and whatnot while you're walking around your car to scrape it all off. Plus, if it melted a little bit and then refroze, like say the next day, there's a sheet of ice that makes it slippery underneath your feet as you're trying to chip away at something and you're shaking your body back and forth. So you don't want to stand on it. It makes it difficult. And so some of the people that I saw would have an entire windshield covered in sticky ice and snow, and they would scrape off just a little bit of their windshield and then get in their car and drive home. Right? Some people, though, they no matter what the conditions, they would scrape all of their windshield, and then they would drive home with all of their windows clear of all the snow. And what I wanted to know was if we were to take the demographics of everyone who went out to their cars in that parking lot and drove away, could we tell something about people as far as how much of a risk taker they were, just by looking at the conditions and whether or not they cleared their windshield of snow. Now, some of the demographics that I wanted to look at were height, gender, and what kind of vehicle they were driving. Was it a truck? Was it a car? And I had a way to be able to tell the height of someone, because when they walked out of the factory's door, you could have a camera there with, just like you would tell in a convenience store after a robbery, the height of the robber, because there's a little ruler right on the side of the door, that you could take their measurement of their height, because they put one right there just for that purpose. So that was easy enough. I could get their height, at least a generalization of their height, just by setting up a camera. The next step was to just observe them as they got into their vehicle on a snowy day, of which there were many in Milwaukee. So I submitted my study proposal to the Ethical Review Board, and it came back with many, many, many things that they said that I needed to change about my study. Some of which were very constructive, and I learned a lot about that. But there were two major flaws that they found in it, where they decided to completely reject the study as a whole. The two major findings were: number one, liability. They said that it was unethical for me to watch people doing something that dangerous. Because if I'm watching that, knowing that they could be getting into their vehicle and then having reduced visibility, that could cause a car accident when they leave. So it would be unethical for me to stand there and watch them do that thing, rather than stand down there and say, hey, please scrape all the snow off your windshield today, and drive safe. Which, that would affect the outcome. If you're reminding people to do that thing that would save their lives right before they should be doing it, they're more likely to do it. And that would just ruin the whole point of the study. And the second thing that they said was just a huge shortcoming of my thought process in this study, was they said that there is no way for me to tell the gender of people who are going into the parking lot and driving away, just based on things like what they look like their clothing and the shape of their bodies. So me making a determination as to what their gender was based on me saying it, rather than them filling out a form before they go out to drive, and checking, I'm a male, I am this tall, and I'm this political party, and all that. Taking all those demographics first before I let them do that. Letting them know that they're in a study, I can't do that, because I can't make the determination about other people's gender when they're wearing, heavy snow jackets. Because girls wear men's snow jackets. There's got to be transvestite or transsexual people there that I would not be able to determine. And so my major hypothesis that I submitted there was that I thought that women would clear their windshields a lot more often than men would. That was one of the things that I was really trying to find out, and they said that I didn't have the ability to. And this experience with me, it really informs me as far as how political the ERB can be, because in the years since, there have been many a study come out of that school that had to do with things that I felt were even more dangerous than what I proposed, but those studies somehow made it through an ERB, such as being around riots relating to the G8 summit and the Occupy movement in Milwaukee and in Chicago, and now the Black Lives Matter riots. There are all sorts of things that they're following that are, in my opinion, also very dangerous situations where, when you see a protest turn into a riot, and things are smashed, and people are hurt and cops are called, that's a dangerous situation in my opinion. But the ERBs seem to favor things that are part of their political agenda, especially in the social sciences. So just because you get through an ERB doesn't mean necessarily that there weren't biases in that ERB to begin with. And it also it taught me that you can take any study, really, and take a list of all of the logical fallacies and all the confounding variables that you could possibly find for a study, and just take everything that could ever go wrong with a study in a list and just start with the premise that this study contains every one of these things. Every one of them. And then just take each thing and just read the study and just do a mental exercise and say, how does this logical fallacy apply to this sentence? And you will find that every thing that you look for, you will find wrong with the study. Everything. And so, you can take what you found wrong and make another study and build on that science. And so it's not a bad thing that every study is guilty of every problem. You know, it's just a way of thinking. You know, it's not exactly that the science is bad. It's that you can always make the science better. So that was my experience. Back to the numbers and back to looking up things that will ruffle up people's feathers. Talk to you later.